Alright, time to deal with the Cathedral, our first major dungeon of the game. And appropriate, like I said, the comparison to the Zelda, game, particularly Ocarina of Time, because this is our, believe it or not, okay, I want to let you guess, potentially, this is a cathedral. In order to get to here, we need to ride a beast, the griffon that the angel used to get here properly. So what kind of element do you think this might be associated with? Again, think of Zelda logic. What kind of element would this cathedral be associated with for a puzzle?
It depends. Could be Earth based off of it. They have elevators. Could be wind given the aerial motion and whatnot.
What about you, Dweebs? All the Zelda elements, that you find in something like Link Ocarina of Time, what do you think, judging from appearance alone, what do you think this cathedral element as a dungeon is based on?
Or bear in mind, I haven't really played much Zelda.
Well, you might know through video essays and such.
I don't really watch those either.
Oh, well, you see.
Take an elemental guess anyway.
I don't know, probably based on, I'm guessing, one of the N64 games.
Yes, but here's the thing, Williams. Remember, Ocarina of Time prides itself to have elemental-based dungeons based on water, infamously, wind, fire, earth, and shadow. So, that's what I was, asking you to guess upon. But again, you'll see it pretty much as soon as we enter, basically.
But shadow's not an element.
It apparently is, according to Ocarina of Time. I don't know how to tell you.
Look, Dweebs, a lot of games will sometimes take scientific liberties with what counts as an element here and there.
If Ted Turner could convince us that heart is an element.
And Lord God...
Yeah, well, whether it's Ted Turner or Miyamoto, it's dumb.
Wait, Well, okay, to be fair, one could say Ted Turner truly did touch our hearts by showing that heart can be just as much the most powerful element when you really think about it.
It was Miyamoto at the time in charge of Zelda, wasn't it?
Yes. He did create it.
Alright, for now...
Yeah, I know he created Zelda, it's just I think he left at some point.
For now, the gimmick is that you have these crystal swords, which are basically just keys, but you can use them as weapons. Now, what you're thinking, oh god, these are crystal weapons, so they break instantly, you need to be careful when you use them. No, actually, you just need to get them from one point to another, and you can swing them to your heart's content. They are they have the same effectiveness as your weapons.
I am legit surprised that they're not fragile, because that seems like a puzzle gimmick you would expect.
They might have been early in development, but maybe the devs thought it was too tedious. Also, I love the jingle every time a door is unlocked in this game. Also, look at that, the Griffin is still going.
Wow. It's going up against a literal boss at that.
I'm sure they'll be fine.
I don't know if I've ever mentioned it, but I find it funny that Liam O'Brien is voicing War here, because War's design arguably reminds me kind of Asura from Asura's Wrath.
I mean, it's a bit bulkier than Asura. Asura did manage to strike a balance of muscular, but also, stubby. A bit like Wolverine when you get down to it. Well, War is clearly more inspired by someone like, say, Forge from the X-Men.
Well, clearly you haven't seen Wolverine at his bulkiest, but I do get your point.
Yes, I know about what Rob Liefeld is capable of doing.
The sad thing is it's not even exclusive to Rob Liefeld when it comes to Wolverine. But, okay, to clarify, I find War here to be kind of a fusion of, say, Azura from Azura's Wrath and Kratos from God of War. Yes, I know, I've already made the God of War joke, but...
I mean, everyone did.
Like, okay, it's his face and skin color that definitely give me Asura vibes. Like, I know Azura's Wrath was definitely popular. I don't know if it really inspired a ton of... never mind then. If anything, Azura's Wrath took cues from this game.
Well, no, that is more inspiration from, Hindu mythologies.
know one could say that's common for games, but it's the face and skin color and structure that make me think of War resembling Asura in a way.
I
And,
mean, if
hey,
anything, again, this is what, like I said, what you would have expected from an Image comic product of the 90s. Again, someone was clearly inspired by Todd McFarlane's, work on Spawn.
that being said, funnily enough, given how Azura's Wrath technically ended in modern times while it was hinting at a big disaster impending due to mystical elements, I could, funnily enough, try and connect that to here if I really wanted to play Fanfic Writer.
Anyway, you may not notice, but because of the lava, of all things, this is your fire temple instead. I know that it might not look, and you're used to, think of Zelda logic, so, the Goron cave for the fire temple, but no, trust me when I say, when it comes to element association, this is the fire temple.
I'll admit, I'm not too surprised because... Okay, I'll admit, the only reason I didn't pick fire is because there's kind of been lava all over the city and whatnot, so I figured that could be basically any place, essentially.
You'll be seen later, but they'll do other things with fire.
Fair enough. I figured it was probably going to be earth or wind because, if we wanted to be more specific, I presume there'd be more fire stuff at the start, but, fire technically works. It's just like I said, fire can work for just
Alright, here's an introduction
of
an object that you can grab, a bomb growth. It's an organic, plant that explodes after you throw it on something. Don't keep it in your hands too long or it will explode on your ass.
Goody, a hot potato.
Literally. Well, it looks more like of a chestnut, but yeah, you get what I mean. But yeah, like I said, since this wears probably the inspiration on its sleeves, you get also these long sequences where, War is just solving the entire dungeon and not saying a single word or anything of note. Maybe if you're lucky, occasionally the Watcher will pop up and say like a funny line while saying we need to move, but that's kinda it.
Okay, I guess to be fair, flavor text was definitely a thing in games by now, but I don't think we were to the point where characters commentating on what was going on was too common in video games at that
The
point.
closest we had was the Sand Saga of Prince of Persia, to be fair, but...
and I guess we did have Glorious Bubsy 3D for a character commenting
well, that was done
on the
in
game.
more ironic fashion,
Yes.
Again, when it comes to the Sand Saga, also I'm strictly applying to Sands of Time and Warrior Within, and the Two Thrones, because Warrior Within sure as hell instead had the prince shut up for most of the journey, unless he was to spout a one-liner in combat like, "You're not worthy of my blade."
What, you mean stuff like, it wasn't
Listen,
compelling dialogue for you?
Despite what I may said about him carry the entirety of Insomniac under his, on his back, I still like Robin Akin does in his performances. But come the fuck on, Yuri Lowenthal was much better technically for the role. Or,
Look,
I mean, I would have been open to see whoever we would have got for that remake, but that's not gonna happen now anymore.
it really is just the case that Warrior Within was a victim.
Of
Yeah,
the
not even a
time,
product,
yes.
but an outright victim of the times, where the theme was to go darker, edgier, more adult of sorts and whatnot.
And I
That's
think I
an-
mentioned during the commentary, I did not even mind the idea of the plot. The prince is just stuck in another location, constantly being chased by Vegeta Haka and tries to save his own skin. That on paper is not too bad of an idea for a sequel that builds up on, what the last game left off, especially because, remember, the first game literally Sonic 06 is in itself out of continuity due to the way it's structured, so, a fresh new location might have been, the better course anyway. But the problem is because, as said, was a victim of its time, it succumbs to all the cliches, the more moody, desaturated color palette, the very blatant skimpy outfit for the characters, which really don't have any justification being there. For the Queen, I may get it, but her lieutenant, the one that ambushes you at first on the ship, and later on you have to fight her. I forgot her name. That one is just, as mentioned in I think Control Delete comic, she literally has a metal thong jammed up her ass.
Oh yeah, I remember that comic. The
smoldering
with generic rage.
Yes.
And Jesus Christ, generic rage really could be the code name for that game.
I mean, the funny thing is that, remember, because it was still also supposed to be a game of the early to mid 2000, it still was also contractually obligated to have funny Easter egg, non-canonical Easter egg, like, Raven's glove that you could find, or a lightsaber that was instead a sword coated in moldy cheese.
Yeah. You know what I think is truly funny though? The reception to that game was so bad that even while we were still in the 2000s, they realized they screwed up and basically tried their best to address it in the Two Thrones, essentially.
Well, it was also because the Two Thrones had a very troubled development cycle in general, even beyond try to course correct. Because remember, the original plan was going to be much different. The idea that the prince had also another ticking time bomb, as in he was gradually losing control in how he would transform back and forward from his regular version to the Dark Prince. There were specific places that would have allowed the Dark Prince to transform. There was going to be a more direct confrontation at the end, a proper boss fight and everything. And I think some of the other supporting characters were going to do something different. So, but again, a lot of things changed over development because of the development cycle and wanting to have the original creator being back with some level of part of the project and all. So that's why the end result feels partially too rushed, because they literally had to rework it a couple of times.
Jesus, that enemy can take out giant chunks of your health.
Yes, well, remember, I'm also playing on normal difficulty. That is why it's probably doing that. If I played on easy, it would feel more like up to more modern standards, so to speak.
I'm not too worried by it. I'm guessing it's a case of risks versus reward, because it looks like with war, you definitely commit a lot to those attacks.
Remember
which
also
means,
that in a lot of things I should be at least tried to counter parry, but unfortunately that is a problem on me, because I'd rather just prefer to try dodging, which is kind of counterintuitive considering war size would suggest instead you to do the parry maneuver.
I'm not too surprised. A lot of games about this day and age were definitely about countering and parrying, which shows time hasn't completely changed, because Lord knows Dark Souls do be about countering.
Well, that was the parry, yeah.
But the reason I bring up Two Thrones as just a shocking bout is, trouble development or whatnot, but you have to imagine how badly a game has to be affected for people to go against the zeitgeist of the time, since by the time of Two Thrones, it was still the rule of thumb to make your stealth go darker and edgier, but apparently the reception of Warrior Within was so bad that they even made essentially the prince's... Jesus. But they essentially made the prince's characterization from Warrior Within an antagonist.
Yep.
What the heck?
These are the equivalents, kind of like to the Wall Masters. They won't kill you, but they're set up so that they leave away a chunk of your health. So you need to find ways to circumvent them. For now, it would be to throw a bomb at them, as you can imagine. You'll
see. You want them? They're yours. So long as you have enough, whatever currency we use from heaven.
Souls. Thankfully, Vulgrim is... well, I wouldn't say much of a better merchant than Morshu, but, I guess it's a bit more amicable, I don't know.
Imagine a demonic being from maybe hell being nicer than a regular merchant.
Alright, there you go. These Lifestone Shards are basically your heart container. Basically, collect 4 of them and you get a new health tank, basically. Or also, occasionally you may get an entire set, completely, but those are rare, as you can imagine.
I'm definitely seeing a lot of the Zelda inspirations here. Question. does like the Zelda format play as the backbone for all the games, or just more so the first two, and then they change
Mostly the
things up with
first
the
two,
third
because
one?
the third one wants to be really instead a Soul-like. It still has a puzzle component, but it focuses a lot more on methodical combat, basically.
It really intrigues me how this really seems to be like the video game equivalent to the Avengers. Like, not just different characters and playstyles, but completely different
Genres,
game
yes.
genres with each one, which, again, would have eventually merged into one finale game or so. And
We
like,
will have to see how that will play out, if we want to use a uniform style that like tries to accommodate elements from each, but we'll have to see, especially because again, Genesis is so particular in how it is a twin stick shooter from a bird view, that in order to replicate that, you will have to turn it instead into a traditional third person shooter for striking gameplay. So again, we'll have to see how that turns out.
I guess I'm just truly surprised by the mindset. And not to say that video game series haven't done different genres, but very rarely have they had games of different genres that are all kind of, you know, needed for the final product. You only rarely get that with, like, mega series like maybe Kingdom Hearts, which, and to be fair to Kingdom Hearts, that was only very peculiar cases, like Recoded, which is all about different gameplay styles.
And that was mostly because of trying to implement gimmicks tied to the console they were released in, which on the long run it kind of proved, you know, counterproductive when it came to, you know, trying to release the games on a single set of, you know, gaming hardware.
And that's why Recoded just got a boring movie, kids.
Same for 358 over 2 days.
That one felt a bit more BS, because while it did have some DS gimmicks here and there, for the most part the gameplay feels akin to typical Kingdom Hearts. In fact, some fans have even taken it upon themselves to do something like that Melon Mix remake or whatnot, which does insert gameplay with the HD cutscenes, but I digress. But yeah, no, like, what I appreciate is just the ambition, though, because okay, maybe this was at a time where people would be more okay with that, but I do have to wonder if they truly thought that this would be the way to go instead of just uniting gameplay amongst the four. I do get it, different gameplay to differentiate each of the Horsemen, but man, placing your bets on different genres, my guess was that their idea was to have these different genres attract all sorts of different players and unite them on the series.
Honestly,
Again, that's
I
just
don't
my
mind
bet.
it too much because, again, if I try to think about it, it just clicks in how it should be, because it talks about four very different individuals. So, you know, of course, it will have to have you know, each of them play in a different, almost completely different way than each other.
Oh yeah, it's that kind of thing I definitely get from a narrative and game lore-wise perspective. It's just, from a business perspective, I can see why a lot of people would find this
And
risky,
that,
but
ladies and gentlemen, is how war opens a hole in the ground.
marvelous.
Ow.
Look, he's smarter than he looks.
And that's how war can spit in your face.
You also
Imagine
might
if he
have
died
noticed
from
that
fall damage.
explosions can give you actually a fire debuff, which slowly saps a bit of your health. Not that much, but it's noticeable.
I do find it funny how war is weak to fire. Like, a lot of iterations I see, usually they make the war horsemen the fire elemental of the group, but they attach elements to them, and, you know, fire just tends to be attributed to war a lot.
I think it's more of a case where, you know, the fire that is exposed with will kill a normal person, but he is just mildly inconvenienced. Same goes for lava. I think that's the logic, you know. It's not completely outright immune, but it can tank much more than the average human would.
I'm talking more so about, I kind of find it funny that it hurts him, though, to be fair, like you said, it's not like it's killing him on sight.
Okay,
So.
now it's time to have some fun. That thing that I'm about to approach is a weapon container. This would be kind of a staple that actually give you new tools and gadgets, so every time you see one, you know that things are about to get interesting. So let's break it.
A Quintesson? What?
Kinda looks like that. This is your first ranged weapon, fucking 4-point shuriken.
Jesus.
Like, it's literally a Kuma shuriken.
This is what we see in Mortal Kombat.
That is literally the BFG equivalent of a shuriken.
It's called
That thing
the
is humongous.
crossblade, quote-unquote. Okay.
Get it? Because it looks like a cross.
Whatever you say, game. And what you're supposed to do
Look.
is, you can, while both locking up to a target that way, or using the manual mode with pressing R3, you can actually launch it to an enemy and it will ricochet to it. If you can charge it, the blade will keep spinning onto the target, doing some level of continuous damage, you're about to see. There you go.
I'm gonna laugh if one of his weapons turns out to be a holy hand grenade.
No, there are some level of modern weaponry, as in firearms. That's, after all, you know, Stripe's signature weapon, but less than what you would expect. You're not gonna see anyone carrying a grenade launcher.
Let me guess, Strife's guns are more mystical and honorable guns
No.
instead of just a typical... Wait, really?
They're kind of like Ebony and Ivory from, you know, Devil May Cry, only that since they're your main weapons, they actually deal damage rather than, you know, being a utility tool.
So is the idea that, like, Strife's a younger Horseman, or did he just seriously always have the modern equivalent of technology even back in
The
the
latter.
old biblical days?
You have to remember, Druva, that these operates on, again, on the spawn level of logic that both Heaven and Hell do have, you know, level of technology that humans had to catch up way later down the line. And the Horsemen, like I said, are a bit of a special case, but we have to wait the second game to understand exactly what they are.
Got it. So, this game's basically just about showing you how cool they can be. The second game's about finally delving into the lore.
Yes, including a bit more expanding on some elements that are set up in this. You can kind of tell they wanted to play the long game by having each game be their own separate adventure, but that even if they were at different points in time, in story, they would progress the overall thing and the player will learn new information about it.
Like I said, the fact that the idea seemed to still be intact even after going through multiple different companies is nothing short of a miracle. But hey, I'm all here to see it through to the end. Like, yeah, I see some flaws, but I can't say I'm not interested.
Alright, these particular enemies, as you may notice, really stink sometimes, but if you use the crossblade, it will cleanse them out of this stench. I don't know how that works.
So, bloater equivalents, got it.
Yeah, like, they're the boomers from Left 4 Dead. There you go, you can potentially lock a number like 4 or 5 targets in total. As you can imagine, since this takes inspiration mostly out of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the idea is that acquire the gadget is used to solve the puzzle inside the temple, and you need to use the gadget to beat the dungeon boss. You know, it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Mayhaps it was very fortunate that mine enemies did leave the very weapon I needed to progress in that chest.
How very nice of them.
Yes, very considerate, so to speak.
I do get what you mean, that it does feel like a missed opportunity to not have Liam O'Brien comment more as War here and there. Like, again, I get that maybe it wasn't the norm, but I feel like there was
I
definitely...
can tell War's character is not super chatty, he's just doing also his job and he's under all the pressure, and he also has for his only company, you know, the Watcher, which is not exactly, you know, fast body material, so I get it.
I do notice, though, that for the dungeons, even Mark Hamill's character's been quiet for a while. And, you know, I'm not asking for him to flap his gums 24/7. Again, I get maybe we were still in a transitional phase with this, but, you know, maybe it's a case where it was still in the transitional phase, so maybe that now that we've been spoiled with games that tend to include more character in the dialogue and whatnot, coming back to this feels a little off. I'm curious, do later games in the series rectify this by, you know...
Is a bit more chatty, but doesn't have a Watcher kind of equivalent, so you have to expect that he has to talk a bit more. Oh no, wait, let me mention this. Here's Air Force main gimmick. You need to ricochet the crossblade on some torches to light the blade up, so you can light some inert bombs. Again, this teaches you how to prioritize targets and imbue something to the blade. It's kinda neat. Like I said, death is a bit more chatty, but he doesn't have a watcher companion, so he will just talk more with the NPCs, but also occasionally say something. He has no problem in having one or two quip, but he's rather than being on the well that's just happened camp, which thankfully we do avoid, he's more on the fact of I look like a cover for an Iron Maiden album, you know, and I need to go up to that. So he tries to be the coolest Shadow the Hedgehog, you know, players around.
Okay, Def being more chatty than War is something I find very unusual.
Okay, it will become more clear when we get to it, but you can tell by the people, the same team, when they made Darksiders 2, they were a huge fan of the original version of The Crow, because also they got, for some reason, Michael Wincott, the villain of that movie, to play the main character, or some reason.
Wait, the villain of it?
Well, you have to remember, Jova, the
well, yeah, I know. I know, but even still, like, you're so obsessed that you go for the villain of that instead of just telling someone, do a Crow impression.
So, at that point, you know, Depp himself has some level of visual similarities to the main character, and the level of trying to be super badass. But again, I'm, you know, getting ahead of myself.
Look,
Fury...
I just find...
Fury has some level of equipping, mostly because she's, you know, battle-oriented to begin with. She really loves to fight, and one of her character arc is to, you know, start to thinking more with her head before jumping into, you know, into action. And Stripe, well, Stripe is the gunslinger, so he does have some comments, but the way Genesis is structured, the general tone of the game is a bit more dry than the usual affair.
So I wonder if they were trying to go outside the norm, because typically in almost every iteration I've seen of the Horseman, it's usually Death that's like the quietest and most stoic of the bunch.
The rider of a pale horse supposed to represent, again, the end of all things, so that's why it will have to be the more sinister, you know, one, and as such, you know, the more quiet. But I guess they wanted to just also capture the whole, you know, image comic vibe here.
Like I said, I found it also weird that they made a Horseman called Fury, which feels like that would overlap with War as well, but again, I guess we'll see how they differentiate her when we get to her game. And then Strife, I don't know if he's supposed to be a simile for, like, conquest, pestilence, or famine or whatnot, or if it's just for suffering in life, or God help me if they called him that just because it sounds like Strafe because he uses guns.
I don't know about that. In my country, his name was localized, quote-unquote, as conflict. So I guess Stripe is supposed to be, you know, referred to that specifically because it's a synonym.
Admittedly, conflict does tend to be a synonym for war over here, too, so that would be a little awkward.
I understand not wanting to include famine because I really don't know what kind of moveset can you create for that kind of character, but I think pestilence would have been fine, so...
I feel like with famine, you could have a lot of AoE attacks that affect your environment, essentially, you know. Granted, it could also be making your opponent starve. I guess maybe they're worried about how OP that would be, maybe, but
maybe
I think we agree that...
drain HP mechanic, I don't know.
Pestilence, though, like, dude, chemical, biological warfare sim. Like, it's kind of right there. Again, maybe they were trying to be different and didn't know. Again, assuming that they had planned out all the Horsemen at that time, had they?
Yes. Again, you've seen their silhouettes in the opening cutscene, and they did release a promotional comic, you know, as a result of which it did function as a slight prequel that shows all of them together.
So basically, everything that's come out is staying true to the vision. Good for them.
Okay, at the very least, people seem to have some contention that Fury's design when Darksiders 3 was released was too different from the one that she had originally, but I disagree. I think she looks pretty much the same. So I don't know where they came from.
Are we gonna cover the comic to compare them?
No, like I said, it's fine. I don't even know if Dreves can actually find it, but it's also worth mentioning that if you read it before doing the game, it spoils you on some of the particular twists that the story has, and if you read it afterward, it's really just pointless. It tells you everything you need to know outside of, seeing a brief, vision on how the horsemen interact with each other. Even then, it's nothing new that doesn't get told in the other games.
So from what I can garner, the main reason to want to read that is if you want to get to see the horsemen interact before the final game, basically.
Well, yeah, to an extent. The other games will provide some level of context on how the horsemen, were talking with each other, but we still are not technically having a game format where all four are in the same room together that much.
Okay, given that the final game of the series hasn't come out yet, is this the longest that a plan for a game series has basically been enacted? Oh, right. Did they have a plan for free, though? Because from what I garnered, Valve don't know how to count to free.
The writer did release the concept that had, that had planned at some point, but now that we know that is officially discarded because not only is not employed anymore to write for Valve, but the way Half-Life Alyx, the VR game that was released out of surprise, the way that game's plot is handled, it kind of renders whatever plans that they had for Half-Life 3, outdated to an extent, because the timeline has changed in some capacity after Alyx. I will not.
So in that case, I'm not sure if I count Half-Life unless there's an end in sight. I should specify, when it comes to a game series that actually does have an end in sight.
Kingdom Hearts,
this might be... Yeah, sure, there's totally an end in sight for Kingdom Hearts.
I mean, that... if you want to count, Disney running out of patience and rescinding their contract with Square Enix, which I still running on the theory as we're recording right now, that it might be a genuine case, if I have to be honest.
I will say it is sadly a possibility because Kingdom Hearts definitely makes Disney a ton of money, but I do have to wonder if even Disney are going to get a bit fed up with how long Square are taking with Kingdom Hearts games, especially
I thought
after...
it was the opposite, that the reason why we're not getting news is because Disney is rescinding the contract and we haven't, got any official confirmation just yet. So.
As far as I know, the ball's basically been in Square's court to actually get the games released. As far as I know, it was Square's decision to cancel Missing Link and all that, and Square apparently are calling the shots with the releases for the most part. I don't know.
We'll see.
Okay, my point is that as far as we know, they still have plans to keep the series going as long as it makes them enough money here. So my point with Darksiders is one that seemed to have a finite plan. From the very start. It wasn't even about okay guys, we're getting tired, let's end it at free, Naughty Dog.
Fine then, Beyond Good and Evil.
Well, goddamn, that one's sad, but yeah, I guess it applies.
It's a good thing that they stopped caring.
I'm so sorry. It's insane though. That thing's a roller coaster though. At first it was oh, cool, sequel coming. Then fans lost hope. Then suddenly hope's reignited with that one E3 that was really good of Ubisoft's. Wait, sorry, hope disintegrated again, and now it's just...
Michel revealed himself to be an asshole in the meantime.
And I forget if they even announced that they canned it again or not,
no,
but I feel like most fans...
still supposedly in development. Despite Ubisoft's very shaky situation and all titles being cancelled, apparently Beyond Good and Evil 2 is still considered to be in production. Lord knows
it's not
how.
officially said it's cancelled.
Yeah,
so...
and again, we had no problem mentioning what other titles were cancelled, so Lord knows what's happening.
The Prince of Persia remake getting cancelled boggles my mind. It seemed like they had something. They had stuff of substance, but I guess something went wrong, and now they're announcing a Black Flag remake, which, okay, to their credit, Black Flag, while a great game, does have some room for improvement. And from what I hear, apparently they're going to be cutting down on the modern timeline
They're
stuff.
also adding apparently new content which involves the supporting characters that we're interested in, so Blackbeard and Steve Bonnet, for example. But my point is that while it will be appreciated when they do something about it, it's equally pointless. There's a bit of an appeal to triviality kind of thing going on. While on the other hand, if you ask me, the first Assassin's Creed is very important for the franchise. It's a cornerstone. It will be good for an anniversary, and there's the fact that it's not as available as much as the other titles. And the current existing PC version kind of sucks. It's optimized.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I should know. I have it on Steam. Like, God, if I ever start covering Assassin's Creed for the channel, I'll probably wait for something that, actually has a bit more polish.
PC Gaming Wiki tells you a bunch of mods and fixes that you can install, but it's a cry for help on the same level as Sonic Adventure 2,
And here's the thing. Sonic Adventure 2 was a game made well before PC ports, and, it was like, from like the days of the Dreamcast. That I can get needing mods. Assassin's Creed, yeah, I get it. It's old, but it was made at a day and age where they should have known better. And yeah, I know some could say that, around the time PC gaming was reaching its stride with stuff like Steam, a lot of PC ports weren't optimized well. First off, not an excuse, companies should have done better. Secondly, they've had decades to clean it up. Decades.
But you get what I mean. A remake would be a perfect opportunity for a new version that's more stable. Not to mention,
I do agree. Yes.
I have to argue, the first Assassin's Creed you forgot, does the whole weird thing where rather than having traditional cutscene, a lot of times you just have the character walking around and the others are talking to you, even if it's not the follow an NPC through a camp while the camera pans around, while it still focuses on your back, like a lot of modern Sony games do. It's not on that level, but it has some of the same ideas in Merit, and I really don't understand why they did that. They kind of dropped it for the most part in the later games. But it's still so bizarre, so, a chance of potentially also fixing that would be neat. But again, unfortunately, also, mini-boss time, the Jailer. Unfortunately, we live in the age where, companies are prioritizing remaking stuff that they are sure to give them money because it was popular enough, rather than to always prioritize things that needed actual fixing or proceed in the proper order of release of a product.
Resident Evil 4 remake. Like, yeah, I've heard people say that remake's great, but I've said it before and I'll say it again.
Konami technically did it a bit worse by starting with Silent Hill 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3,
Okay, I'll give Metal Gear Solid 3 credit. That one's technically chronologically the start, so maybe if they want to do something like working their way down chronologically, I'm there for it. But I definitely agree with you about Silent Hill 2, like, come on, guys. Oh, yeah,
it seems that because it was popular enough, and now Blooper is actually remaking the first one now, so what I
didn't Final Fantasy have this issue as well? Because the first one to get remade was 4 on the DS.
Well, okay, what I remember is first there were the ports on the PlayStation, then the GBA versions, which did have where 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, meaning that 3 was not even properly cared about. Then there were the DS version of 3 and 4, which the team then moved on to do the 4 Heroes of Light and then the Bravely Default games. When it came to other remakes, it was just mostly ports before the the 7 remake.
Trying to give him CPR.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where the real monster was the little guy controlling the big guy. Cute.
I do love how he literally beats up the jailer with a cage. Ain't that poetic?
It's also one of those cases where the finishers are just one button QTs and only occasionally to have some more buttons involved, but it's rare than that. Sometimes it's just a case of press circle, to finish.
But yeah, I compare the Assassin's Creed 4 remake situation to the Resident Evil 4 remake situation because Resident Evil 4 getting a remake was controversial for two things. One, Resident Evil 4 was already regarded as a classic, but to be fair, the remake did show there was some room for improvements. Apparently, I still prefer the original overall, but
I mean, I guess
the fact that
one thing you could improve was the way QTEs were involved. Like I mentioned multiple times that I don't really have as much of a problem as other people on the internet have, but the way that we're implementing the vanilla in the original version of 4 were clumsy, to say the least.
Which, to be fair, from what I understand, they pretty much took out the QTs anyway. I just don't... Again, part of my issue with the Resident Evil 4 remake is they removed a lot of the cheese from 4, and I'm like, I'm sorry. We have to be honest enough with ourselves to realize that, yes, Resident Evil is about horror, but it's also about the cheese. If you take out the cheese, you have more of a generic horror thriller, essentially.
And then they listened to you and said, ah, yes, the cheese, like yellow, like all the yellow paint sprayed throughout the entire game.
Lord God Almighty, which Ganado is the one who was splashing yellow paint all over the place?
I think it might have been just Sadler, for funsies, because
I've seen more of the remake compared to the original, but and like if I did watch reviews for the original, I can't really remember a whole lot.
My point is, though, Resident Evil 4 Remake took priority over a game that actually really needed a remake, Code Veronica. Whenever you hear people joke about Resident Evil going over the top with backtracking and puzzles and whatnot, the quintessential example is Code Veronica, because for the most part, one could say Resident Evil games are linear enough that it doesn't feel too bad. But then you get Code Veronica, which not only has a lot of iffy controls. It was, I think, the last of the main ones to do tank controls, not counting Resident Evil 0 and Remake. So. But also, it has a lot of first-time player traps, which just are not great.
Also, a very awkward way how they handle the villains.
Oh, boy, yes. Again, let me put it like this. Giving Resident Evil 4 a remake before Code Veronica was just baffling, since, one, you were moving in order anyway, so why skip over Code Veronica? And two, again, a Resident Evil 4 remake could have come later. I don't know why they
It's also getting to the point of how weird things are getting, where, Renine Quim is referencing stuff from the remake version of 2 rather than the vanilla version. So it makes you wondering, where are we? What time is it?
This was sadly one fear I did have with the remakes, in that I was hoping that the remakes would probably just stay as their own different timeline, when clearly they were changing up how story details happened in the games.
We haven't done technically on a plot level time travel yet, so who knows? Maybe that would be their true endgame where they're going. The Resident Evil multiverse is collapsing onto itself. We're bringing Alice to save everyone.
God. The funny thing is, Resident Evil is a game series that has, for the most part, dedicated itself to explaining everything scientifically. Even Resident Evil Village, while you think, oh, it's mystical stuff and whatnot, it turns out it's just one wacky woman whacked out on penicillin and some mold, essentially, that's causing all this stuff to happen. Time travel would technically be scientific, it would be bonkers, but yet I would not be too surprised by that. What I love is the fact that Resident Evil characters always take multiversal threats and stuff like Project Cross Zone and the Marvel vs. Capcom stuff on the chin. Although Marvel vs. Capcom kind of cheats because it tries to pretend that all the Capcom characters were totally in the same world together.
I mean, I think I mentioned a couple of times, some of the franchise, outside of the ones that are actually confirmed to be in the same universe, just at different points in time, like Street Fighter and Final Fight, for example. Resident Evil fits well with stuff like, say, Dead Rising, because it roughly has the same kind of idea going on, and the similar level of conspiracy theories that lead to zombie outbreaks. But the problem is that Resident Evil timeline later down the line becomes so convoluted in terms of multiple organizations organizing bioterrorist attacks all over the world, mind you. It becomes globe-trotting multiple times. That it would not really make sense to have something like, say, Street Fighter happening at the same time. I'm sorry. Like,
Also, I'm calling it now. Requiem really went that whole, oh, it turns out the connections may have been behind Umbrella because someone at Capcom regretted them kind of ending Umbrella off screen. Like, I kid you not, Dwibs. A lot of games talk about, we gotta take down Umbrella, we're gonna take down Umbrella. Then after Code Veronica, Resident Evil 4 literally opens with, the Umbrella Corporation was taken down. Off screen, and now we're dealing with Ganados instead.
And not even in, glorious fashion. You think it was going to be someone, fighting the corruption and Coronisi Phoenix Wright style, but apparently it was just oversaturation of the market. Anyway, this is the first time where I start to finally speed up the fight scene, and I just say I'm never gonna stop.
I was wondering if this was some Siva Gunner because he likes to include the Space Jam theme in a lot of his remixes.
Yes, but this one instead was actually done on its own. I don't remember who originated it, but you get my point also. This is where this point where the fight scenes start to become, very repetitive. Fun to play, free for playing the game, but as you can see, not super stimulating, so, let's hurry things along.
Yeah. But, okay, I guess to be fair, they do... Okay, based off of all the stuff that did gather up and a bit of stuff from the Umbrella Chronicles, we can assume that Umbrella did indeed get taken down in an epic court battle, since apparently they were basically served hard, and Oswald Spencer even had to go into hiding. So, hey, maybe we can employ that the way Umbrella gets taken out is indeed an Ace Attorney style.
I mean,
problem is we don't even get to...
The Capcom games also have a way of, referencing each other via Easter eggs without having to be canon. Let's not forget that the Borginian Republic that is mentioned in Apollo Justice is completely different from the way the Borginian region of Dino Crisis works. It's just, cool name.
Yeah. And then there's Dual Destinies kind of doing an implication that may or may not make Ghost Trick canon, which honestly I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case because Capcom these days have pretty much all but confirmed Ghost Trick to be part of the Ace Attorney series, especially since they now even group it in on Ace Attorney sales on Steam and whatnot. And hey, apparently that seems to be doing wonders for the remasters' sales, so by all means...
Still makes me wonder why they had pretty much the entirety of the franchise of Ace Attorney not translated anymore in Italian and Spanish, but Ghost Trick they absolutely had no problem in using the Italian and Spanish translations. Okay, remind me again, John, because I haven't played that much. Does Ghost Trick include any voice line clips similar to Ace Attorney? Not necessarily full-on voice acting, but something on the small beats similar to the objection and hold it lines.
No. As far as I know, there is no voice acting.
It might be that then, because from what I hear, some people speculating about, one of the reasons why the Spanish and Italian translation is not, outside of the fact that they were handled apparently by Nintendo of Europe for the European releases, one of the reasons is that they will need to recycle or having new voice clips from those mold beats, and they really don't want to, forge contracts with voice actors again for it, apparently.
Yeah, no, Ghost Trick has never had any voice acting. If it did, it would have strictly been just for a trailer, and I don't think even the trailers had that. But
anyway,
no voice acting in the games.
After using the 3 crystal swords, one cast crystal swords in the main room, we finally, have the main plaza being up top, which unlocks the door that leads us to Tiamat, finally.
I love the little musical jingles they
Yeah,
put in
do,
there.
do,
That
do.
really does give the Zelda vibe.
Yes.
Although to me it sounds like to me the track sounds like it's just started and it stopped after a second. It's like the composer was like,
So how,
yeah, good enough.
how funny would it be if we made it to the top and it turns out Tiamat's still fighting that damn griffin down below?
And, you know, the Griffin kills Tiamat for you or something.
Yes. Oh, you thought you were getting a boss fight? No need, boss.
Alright, if I recall correctly, in this chest in particular instead, there is a fragment of the Abyssal Armor piece. Each game does contain, in some form or fashion, this quote-unquote Abyssal Armor, which is basically kind of function as a combination of an alternate outfit for your character and defense enhancement boost. Basically, after you manage to collect all the pieces, you do get, you know, this new cool, more edgy armor that works very well in reducing the incoming damage. That's it.
I was about to ask if it actually shows up cosmetic.
Yes, although don't get too excited, at least for this game it's basically a palette swap for War. It will become more elaborate starting with the next game.
I wonder if maybe the final game will establish that these are like their super forms and they'll need to don them for the final battle or
Potentially,
whatnot.
but for the purpose of the cutscenes, the characters do not wear them, so who knows.
I'm not too surprised. This was definitely well before we got to the modern day of gaming, where nowadays cutscenes can be so HD that the in-game models
they're
can
trying
be used
to
throughout.
avoid pre-rendered as much as they can.
Which, hey, makes mods all the more great now.
Here we go.
Oh, good. It's raining and everything up
Speaking of
top here.
pre-rendered, you can tell because this is locked in 30 FPS. So. And of course, since a lot of this was a 2010 product and Tiamat is female in this version, she's voiced by Lani Minella. Also, poor Griffin couldn't make it. So.
My, Luke. Your voice sounds a little sore.
Too many times saying welcome to London.
So this is Lani Minella.
Yes.
Yes.
You won't like my terms.
And of course she has boobs.
I mean, we need to understand that this character is supposed to be female, don't you know?
Okay, to be fair, I have seen a lot of older versions of Tiamat that also do show a bare chest. Some do like to establish her as like a mother of monsters, or in some cases, the mother of all humanity.
Well,
and all
when it
that,
comes
so.
to D&D, she's just a dragon with 5 heads, you know, with multiple heads. I don't remember if it's 5 or even more. Basically, what you're supposed to do is, as you can imagine, launch the bomb fruit and then, while avoiding her fire bombs, igniting to actually bring her down.
So
Again,
when it comes to
Zelda
the
logic,
elements,
that's gone.
when it comes to each of the elements of these temples, do the bosses also reflect their elements?
To an
Like
extent,
how
as you
she's
can see,
shooting
she's
fire at
shooting
us?
fireballs. It's not always a guarantee, but to an extent, yes.
This is definitely one of the more bat-like Tiamats.
Yeah, like
the
I
one
said,
from
it's
Fake.
usually a dragon most of the time.
It's one of those cases where the voice is so edited, I probably couldn't tell you it's Lani Minella off of the first
I
bat.
could recognize because I heard this type of impression that Lani Minella does in a couple of games, particularly recent one where she has to voice the, you know, old lady type of character.
Maybe. I wonder if there was ever like a cut zombie level, and this is what from Bubsy 3D, and she would have given Bubsy this voice.
Clearly.
What could possibly go wrong?
See, now something about that actually sounds cool, and we can't have that in Bubsy, at least back then. God
Yeah.
help us. Bubsy 4 might actually be good.
Well, I have to
Bubsy
say,
4D.
what does the D stand for?
Dimension.
Fair enough.
A lot of talk to him up, but you're lacking.
Ow.
Okay,
She also
that was
starts
actually
using a bit of that slam maneuver occasionally.
That was just an outright Falcon Punch there.
Yes, war is just that cool. You also do the thing where sometimes when the enemy is staggered, it gives that little screen shake, and you know, it can be a bit distracting.
Oh, so the screen shake's supposed to be like a cue for you that the enemy's staggered?
A bit. You may notice when it's that you know, particular maneuvering you inflicting, it basically says you're now inflicting a real amount of damage.
Lord God, shaky cam was definitely not just a thing in movies. Can you imagine if they somehow found a way to integrate shaky cam into comics as well?
I mean, the wide angles and all, I guess, but that's more about steel than anything. Anyway, to finish properly off, in a cutscene, War rips literally the wing out of her.
Ow. Admit it, War, you were just winging it.
Ha.
Do it! Tear out her heart while she still lives. I want to hear her scream. One of the chosen. I can grant your...
I mean, you can say many things about Mark Hamill, but you can tell him when he was not really phoning it in. No? Yeah.
No.
Okay, to his credit, he did ask. Okay, to his credit, he did ask, you know. Like, you know, I'll give War credit. This one seems to be a more methodical take on War, like, you know, the kind who's aware of his job, but doesn't let, like, the sense of War consume him. Like, he did legit try to see if there might be an easier solution.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is the canonical ending for the Bubsy franchise. Turned into this giant mutated creature spawned from hell and was killed by a combination of a Red Knight and the Joker.
Somehow that
terrible.
is not as, you know, somehow that still feels less trippy than whatever happened in Bubsy 3D.
Alright, tune in for the next part where we find a way to get back to Samai so we can give him the first art. See ya.
Lovely.
Ta-da.